Well, I come to everything kind of sideways, and I'm not the standard healthcare practitioner any more than I was the standard scientist or the standard nonprofit consultant or standard stay-at-home mom. And so I'm actually kind of combining a lot of the different interests I have. One of the things was that I used to be an animal behaviorist, and I kind of always wanted to be Dr. Dolittle a little bit. And I discovered, as I started to get this training, that I could bring in the animal work. And so that's one of the things that I have really enjoyed, just because it fits really beautifully. But what happened was I sort of got into this from the point of view of a client, really, more than just somebody who's like, oh, I'm going to be a healer. It started with my when I was giving birth to my first child. I had a practitioner who was working on me who was trained in the kind of stuff that I do, and so I was in labor and having craniosacral therapy, going, this is really cool. And then my daughter had some sinus issues and things, and so I first started to sort of experience what this work could do by looking at it on a very young baby. And this is actually one of the last things I could ever imagine myself doing, because it's very different from where my background was. But when you watch the baby and see these massive changes happen to her when she was 3 months old, and she's got the sinus infections, and then she doesn't have the sinus infections, and really watching how she participated in the sessions that she would get, and how she was clearly involved and clearly in control, and just it's sort of, for somebody with my scientific background, it's like, wow, well, if this can work on a baby, it's clear she's not just decided that she's going to be pleasing you. She doesn't have the, it's not faith healing, because the baby doesn't have any particular faith whatsoever about, whether this is going to work or it's not going to work. And then when after I had my second kid, I started realizing that I could work on myself, and I cleared a mastitis, which was the first time I had ever done anything like that. I was just like, oh my God, what did I just do? And then so not only have I come as a client, but it's been particularly coming as a parent. Because then my eldest daughter got sick with a rather serious form of epilepsy. And that was sort of the thing that just sort of kicked me into doing this as much as it could, because when you're in that position, and for her it was potentially deadly, you sort of do whatever you can to try to make a difference to what's happening with your kid. And started to take classes and started to realize that I had a lot of potential to be able to do that work. And so the first person I worked on was my daughter, and then also my father. And I worked on him on his deathbed. So that first year I had like 3 dying people, and, babies, and, and it was just sort of like being thrust into it. And I actually got to a point where I had to stop working on my daughter until I had more experience, because I was just getting too involved with it. But then I got that experience, and I, can work on her some more. But I think the perspective of having come from the client does a couple of things. One is it really kind of breaks down the barrier between my understanding what it's like to be a client dealing with this kind of stuff, and potentially coming from some place where it's like, this is never anything I would have thought I would find interesting. But the more I do it, the more my brain is really engaged, and I realize that there's all kinds of, you find yourself on the frontier, and it's just because people think they understand how the body works doesn't necessarily mean that they actually do. And when you see somebody going through this healing process, you start asking, like, wow, how does that work? What's going on there? How is this possible that and if you start getting away from some of the more granola kind of ideas of and start really looking at it, it just becomes pretty fascinating. And so that's kind of why I keep doing it. And then being able to stick in the animals was also great.